Sharing is caring, but looks like a school has decided that it's best done in a vegetarian-only environment. So we decided to unbox some tiffins, not literally, but to look into where lunchbox rules and the right to choice begins, or as some may argue in this case, ends. This is a leading school in Delhi NCR region. In fact, it has branches across India for that matter. They have sent out a circular, quote-unquote, respectfully requesting parents to not send non-vegetarian food in the tiffins. Why? We have accessed the notice. It says, 1, non-vegetarian food may get spoilt by lunchtime. 2, schools value an environment of diversity and inclusivity. By maintaining a vegetarian environment, we ensure all children feel respected. Is this problematic? Is this a case of lunchbox rules versus right to choose? India is a diverse country by every means, and so food, nutrition and preferences are not only binaries of vegetarian versus non-vegetarian, but also south versus north. Families' preferences, east versus west as well. Religion, dietary requirements, places of stay, and even more nuanced in modern nuclear setup, where parents prep the child and themselves for a long day at work. Often, tiffins a selection from the meals cooked for the family. Closely tied to this is the right to choose, part of Article 21. That's right to life and personal liberty. But of course, that comes with reasonable restrictions. So, is a school peeping into your child's bowl of food reasonable or a breach of your right? Before I get some of the best minds to answer them, remember, even government-sponsored midday meals have eggs. And of course, states can opt. So you have states like Andhra, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Bihar, Uttarakhand, to name a few, that allow eggs as well as part of the midday meals. Which had, by the way, 2 important purposes: to be able to retain the children in the schools as well as nutrition to counter malnutrition. In fact, malnutrition is a very complex issue in India. Just stay with me for this minute. Indian adolescents face the double burden of malnutrition, that is undernutrition, stunting and thinness alongside nutrition, overweight and obesity that are linked with socio-demographic factors. The National Nutrition Program Poshan Abhiyan should prioritize high-risk groups, specifically older age groups, 15 to 19 years, women and low wealth index families identified in several analyses. This, by the way, is a 2022 study by Comprehensive National Nutrition Survey data that looks into burden and predictors of malnutrition among Indian adolescents 10 to 19 years. We're just trying to give you a glimpse of how complex this issue of lunchbox really is in India. And it's not just about one child or one state or just one cluster of children. And I just thought it was very important to get the right voices, right perspectives into this. I'm glad we're being joined by Vrinda Sarup, who's a former Secretary of Education. Glad that thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you so much for joining us. Glad that you have joined us. My first question at this point, ma'am, what do you make out of this particular policy by the school? Not a policy, but this kind of a notice, a circular, a request by the school. How do you look at this?
I think diet is a very, very personal thing. And normally schools and authorities do not invade this space.
Okay, there's a resistance at any attempt of the state to look into one's bowl of food. But can schools do that?
No, I don't think schools can either, because this is something which is a diet of a child even in a school environment, is a private domain. And, there are two kinds of situations. One is where, as you mentioned, the food is carried in the individual child's tiffin box, which is entirely her or his private space, and it's between the families what they want to feed their child. So that's one aspect. The second is you do have hostels. You do have institutions which give a noon meal or even in day schools. And these are very carefully calibrated from the point of health and nutrition, and also to a large extent on choice. And I mean, I also grew up in a hostel, and there were days when you could have those who ate non-veg would be given a non-veg dish separately. So it is something which is so personal to the diet of a child that the school environment or a hostel environment basically looks at what is nutritious, what is healthy, and choice. So that's how the education systems have been working in the past, and I suppose they should continue that.
Well, you know, you speak about nutrition and choice. It's not easy for young children to adapt to a different food culture at school for whatever reasons, particularly young children. And then you also have the other side of it where parents may feel comfortable with a homogeneous group, as it were. To both of these sides and these perspectives, a school that's trying to balance between the two or going one way instead of the other, how would you look at it?
No, but that is no interference in this. There should not be any interference in this, at least from the school side or any other authority. This is a individual decision, private decision of that family, what it wants to provide in their own child's tiffin, or what is the school meal that they're signing up for. This is a completely private domain.
Okay. But, in this particular context, this rule seems to be for kindergarten schools all the way till the 12th class. And I mean, when you look at this, in a matter of a year or two, those who are in class 12 would be voting for a party to be in government. They would be deciding the future of the country. So how are we equipping them, training them to discern, make choices? I'm trying to understand here. Schools, speaking of inclusivity and diversity in a vegetarian environment, do you see this the right way?
This is an instance where obviously they stepped out of line. So this is again a space which schools should not be invading at all. Nobody should be invading in this. This is the child's choice, and her parents and whatever they decide to send in her tiffin box or what they sign up for in a school meal, that's entirely up to them. The school has to only see, that there are proper eating area, proper ways in which children sit in, and that's a courtesies you develop and learn in a school environment. So schools normally just facilitate a decent place to eat, clean, hygienic circumstances. There are good, adequate provision for safe drinking water. These are the things you rely on for a school to be able to facilitate a child's eating break.
Another important question, and the school principal has gone on to clarify at one point that these are respectful requests, not an order or a diktat, as it were. How do you look at that? How does that look to you?
No request should go out of this nature. If if you ask me, this is completely a domain of what the parent would provide for the child, and whatever their understanding is in the family about their type of food, the nutrition level of the food, the healthy food. That's entirely up to them. I don't think the school should have at all issued such a circular.
Okay. My last question to the schools, to the authorities, to governments listening to you, what would you have to say as your parting comment?
As an experienced policymaker yourself?
So I think whatever my experience in the past, has been is that, I mean, we haven't seen this kind of issue ever arise earlier, where schools are intervening in what is to be eaten and what is not to be eaten, and that too in a food pack which is carried from home. I think that is an area well left alone. And as I said, the school's role is really to be able to provide a healthy, safe, hygienic place for them to eat and be able to sit with their, friends or whatever, and then have a proper meal out of their own tiffin that they are carrying. And this is what schools do. I mean, all over the country, and even when we were growing up, it was something the schools facilitated. That's all.
Right. Ms. Vrinda Sarup, the former Secretary for Education, thank you very much for joining us. And just to tell our viewers, it's important as Ms. Vrinda Sarup joins us, our aim is not to target a school or to target an institution. It's a conversation that's important to have in a country like ours. Thank you very much for joining us, Ms. Sarup. I'm also being joined at this point by Pradeep Rawat, who's a representative for a parent body, Neeraj Kumar, who's a nutrition consultant, as well as Khushbu Jain, who's a lawyer with the Supreme Court. Thank you very much, all three of you, for joining us. Ms. Khushbu Jain, do you want to respond to what you heard Ms. Vrinda Sarup say? She's saying it's none of the business of a school. It's beyond their jurisdiction. It's not for them to decide who comes and eats what in whose tiffin. Their job is to ensure that they give a safe environment for whatever the choice theirs or their families would be.
We had the school dictated that what you eat at home, or we would not admit the students who eat non-vegetarian at home, are the one where school has no business to interfere. But when it comes to premises of the school, where you bring in inclusivity, when you bring in that you have kids coming from different religion, kids come from different sentiments, there are aspects of health, is where school has absolutely right to bring in that aspect where they look into the inclusivity. They bring in some laws in place as an authority in their premises. Nobody is restricting or changing your sentiments whether you can be a vegetarian or non-vegetarian. It's your choice, absolutely your choice. Nobody is saying that don't eat in the breakfast and don't come to if you're a non-vegetarian, as a tick box will not give you an admission. But when it comes to having an environment in school, I think this request turns out to be absolutely okay, and we should not make such a hue and cry about it. We, as it is, teach discipline to students. We have certain rules and regulations. You look into the aspect of, I'll go a step ahead, that forget about this, forget about the choice. Kids love sharing. All of us love sharing. So when we share, that aspect of understanding what can be right or wrong. When it comes to health issues, there can be some kids who have difficulty in adopting certain type of food, and we do share, and there are been studies that has been done when it comes to certain non-vegetarian food being cooked early in the morning, not cooked properly. I mean, I'm not going deep into that. That's point number one. Point number two that comes here is the aspect, let's forget the aspect of vegetarian and non-vegetarian. Even in the non-vegetarian, we have layers and layers of it, whether it's different religions have different sentiments as to whether it is halal or whether it is chatka, and
So does
the entire religious
vegetarianism.
sentiment for a toss.
So
So
does
it's not just plain
vegetarianism.
simple veg and non-veg.
Even
So I'm saying
vegetarianism is not a homogeneous group. Even within
absolutely.
groups that prefer vegetarianism, you have a lot of layers.
Absolutely. If I'll have to give you one small example,
Okay, I think that's...
I'm a Jain per se, and my house does profess that aspect of not having anything which is under the root in the house. But at school, I used to eat other people's tiffin, and it's not against. My parents never stopped me doing so. So I eat everything when it comes to anything which is underground, the root part of it, which is the potato or carrots or for that matter other things. But my household is still very strict on that part. They follow that Jainism, that practice about it. So all I'm saying is, all of us love sharing and we do it. And when it comes to kids, they practically do not understand. And it can have health issue, it can have religious, it can hurt sentiments, and it can have other things.
Okay.
So when it comes to bringing in that inclusivity for all, I think everybody can have a vegetarian food. That's not against anybody. And if that kind of thing comes at the premise of the school, we see so many rules coming in the school. Gone are the days, yeah,
Okay.
we have to stop bringing in that there
Okay.
cannot be any rules.
Okay. Pradeep Rawat, do you want to come in at this point? Do you want to respond to what Khushbu Jain has said? You had an earlier panelist who was a former Secretary for Education. She went on to say that, listen, it's none of the business of the school. School has a job to ensure that there's a safe environment for everybody to do what they want to eat what they want to, because India is a very complex country anyway. It has so many layers. But Khushbu Jain is using that very argument to say, let there be rule. Let there be a rule that professes that a particular way of food be allowed for all. How do you look at this as a parent and as a representative of a parent body?
See, to tell you the truth, food is a very personal choice. We should not be rather forcing upon someone that this is the food you are supposed to eat at your lunch or not. So, as far as bringing the tiffins to the school for children is concerned, it should be the choice of the parents and the children what they want to eat. And as far as different layers of food are concerned, I agree that there are different layers of food in vegetarianism also, in non-veg also. But ultimately, what I feel is if we start telling children what to eat and what not to eat, basically we are trying to invade into their private area. And the second point that was mentioned by my previous panelist, she was saying that children share the food, but we can always tell children, our children, that what food they are supposed to be eating and what food they are not supposed to be eating. So if a family is totally into vegan food or vegetarian food, they can always tell the children what other children are offering, what they should be eating and what they should not be eating. So as far as I'm concerned, I'll give you my example. I will not go into any hypothetical example. I'm a pure vegetarian. I don't eat anything non-veg or even egg also. But my son doesn't. He takes non-veg food also. So I'm perfectly fine with it. So what I'm saying is there's no religious angle to it. The only thing is let parents and child decide what they want to eat. Let us not force anything extra special on children. Let them be what they are. This is what I feel.
Okay. You know, an important part, and what Khushbu Jain also pointed out, is the school is not saying it's a diktat. The school is saying it's not an order. The school is saying we respectfully request. But how does it work when a school sends a circular to a parent and says we respectfully request? Is it seen as a respectful request that has an option of saying a no to? As a parent, how do you look at that?
Very, very nice question. See, it always starts with a request. But normally what happens is if a parent or a child doesn't, go by what the school says, then that particular parent or a child is pointed out. So it is always going to start with a request, but ultimately they will be, kind of pointed out. They will be told that everybody else is following it. Why are you not following it? And there are so many ways by, adopted by schools to, kind of even torture children or kids on so many issues. So what I feel is this is an issue which should not be touched upon. Let children bring to the school whatever they want to eat, as far as that food is not stale, that food is not hurting anybody's. And such a most important thing is children should be told that, my dear, this is the food you're getting and this is the food you're supposed to eat, and don't share it with somebody else who's not a vegetarian or non-vegetarian. So that is entirely up to the choice of children and parents. But I feel it's completely baseless kind of an order, and the request will ultimately turn into an order. This is what I feel. It should be stopped at the very first place. If you remember, very recently there was.
I know I have another panelist who's waiting, but
just a minute. I'll take. There was recently an order by Zomato of green dress and red dress. You must have noticed that the same thing happened. They started with the dress, but people, chose to oppose it and they took back the order. So the same thing is going to happen to schools also. If they start doing this, ultimately parents will, come against the school and they will have to take back the order. That is what I feel. This should not be. No parent should be asked to decide by schools what they eat and what the children should eat.
Okay, I know Neeraj Kumar is waiting. I see him smile also in between. Allow me 2 more minutes, Mr. Neeraj. Let me very quickly go across to Khushbu Jain at this point. Khushbu Jain, do you want to respond to what the parent has said, Mr. Rawat has said at this show? And it's interesting because the very statement that you used as your basis has a very different perspective for a parent who's here. You said it is not a diktat, it's not an order, and that's what the school has also said. The school has said it is a request. It is a respectful request is what the school has said. But for parents who are sending their children to school day after day after day, how many would have the courage to say, it's a no from us? Let's be fair.
I am to not even in favor of just bringing in as a, I mean, let there be a rule. I'm pro rule over here, not just a request. Because when you are running an organization, you have absolutely all the rights when it comes to you're looking into the aspect of inclusivity, when you're looking at the aspect of health, when you're looking at the aspect of making each child comfortable, not make a child
But Mr.
uncomfortable.
Rawat is saying exactly that. This is not
But
inclusivity, is what he's saying.
this is what I'm saying. There are
You
two
are saying it's a
contradicting
ground for
statements.
inclusivity. Mr. Rawat is
Respectfully,
saying it's not.
respectfully, Mr. Rawat has made two contradictory statements. He's talking about let that be choice of a children, let him eat whatever he wants to eat. We should not interfere. At the same time, you want the child that you want to teach your small kid that whether to share food or not to share food, not to eat. How can you teach your child? How can you be looking into it? It's impossible to look into it. I'm giving you my own example. I love
Okay,
potato.
okay.
I have there is
Okay,
not
okay.
a single
30
potato
seconds. Let
that
me
has
just
entered.
quickly go to Mr. Rawat. But Miss Khushbu, one important part to what you're saying, it's not just small children. We're talking about 9, 10th, 11th, 12th class students as well who are not really small. But nonetheless, Mr. Rawat, 30 seconds, and I have to go to Neeraj Kumar after this. Please respond since you raised your hands.
What I said was not contradictory. What I said was children are very smart nowadays. They are not like our times. They are very smart. They understand things in this age of internet. They sometimes know even more than us. Sometimes I have to go to my child to ask about the internet, a lot of stuff. So what I feel is children are smart enough to make their choices. Let them make their choices and let us not force any choice on them. Whatever they want to eat, let them have. That is my simple statement.
Okay, all right. Okay. For next few minutes, we're just going over to Neeraj Kumar, who's a nutrition consultant. Mr. Neeraj Kumar, it's interesting to have you on this discussion because we also wanted to take this discussion a step forward to parents who are watching this. Of course, there's a debate around what the school has done, whether it is welcome or not, but there's also another critical part that India needs to look at, nutrition, which is often a byproduct of what you have and what you don't have, the privileged and the not so privileged. But also there are studies that show largely there are concerns about malnutrition when it comes to even teenagers and adolescents. Mr. Neeraj Kumar, how important is a lunchbox?
It is utmost important because when a children is going to school, half of his day is they are spending in the school, and equally, I mean that during those half day, whatever food they eat consists of the 50% of the nutrition that a child should take throughout the day. So yes, as far as nutrition importance of nutrition is concerned, it is very important, and the lunch box that children should have with them should contain food that is nutritious, hygienic, and it should be fulfill their need.
Mr. Neeraj, what would you say an ideal tiffin box for a week would be?
All right. So there are some nutrients which are helpful during growth age of the child, right? So if a child is school going, that is the period of their growth, their overall body growth in terms of height, also in terms of overall body growth also, right? So there are few nutrients that should be there in the lunch box in the form of food. It should have protein, it should have carbohydrate, it should have good fatty acids, and it should have a good amount of water also, right? So for a good kind of growth, these are some of the, apart from the other micro and macronutrients, which include iron, which include calcium, which include vitamin B and vitamin C and vitamin D. So these food, some of these are available through nutritious food. Some of them can be taken in other forms also.
So tell me something, would you propagate, I mean, how do you look at this debate around vegetarianism versus non-vegetarianism that possibly is imposed? And that's really the key word at this point, that is imposed. It's not self-driven, it's imposed. Would you say it could be worked as a substitute either ways, or would you say it's best that a lunchbox constitutes of multiple sources through the week across veg or non-veg, if at all the children are willing to take it in that form, if at all the families are willing to take it in that form? How would you as a nutritionist look at this debate that we're looking at?
From the nutrition perspective, it hardly matter whether children is carrying a food which is vegetarian or non-vegetarian. See, almost all the nutritional need can be fulfilled purely through vegetarian food. And if you include the non-vegetarian food also, that also helps. I mean, if someone says that vegetarian food is not good enough or doesn't provide all the nutrients, that is a wrong statement. Almost all the nutrients you can get through vegetarian meal, right? So it's up to your preference. It's up to parents and children's preference what kind of food they choose. If they choose vegetarian food, they can fulfill their need throughout the life. And even if you are vegan, then also you can fulfill most of your nutrient need, except for few. Like there are some nutrients which are animal-based food, like say, for example, vitamin B12. There are other nutrients like omega-3 fatty acid, which generally found in very lesser amount in vegetarian sources. So some of the nutrients for that you might go for, supplementation or, fortified food. But for most of the nutrients, you can, rely on vegetarian food. That's absolutely perfectly fine.
All right, that's interesting. Pradeep Rawat, as a parent, do you look at what's unfolding in this school as a debate of vegetarian versus non-vegetarian, or do you look at it as a debate of lunchbox rules versus the right to choose?
As far as I'm concerned, as
what's
a parent,
your perspective on this?
As a parent, I feel this is more to do with what schools suddenly, one fine day they woke up and decided that we want to within commas, we want to request parents to send children with the vegetarian food. So what I feel is this is kind of invading into the privacy of a child. We should not be doing it. No schools have the right to tell children what they should be eating and what should be their eating habit should be. And as previously mentioned by our previous panelist, who's a nutritionist, he was saying that, half of the day, in fact, most of the day is spent in the school only. So in that period, the good nutritious food is required. And if a child or a family feels that vegetarian food is okay with it, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. But if they feel that they want to, send something non-veg to the child, there should be nothing wrong with that also. So I feel it's absolutely the choice of the family and the child. No intervention from anyone, not from the school, not from the authorities, not from even the government also. Let children decide what they want to eat. As simple as that.
Okay. Khushbu Jain, my last question to you. You were talking about how during your growing years, you shared tiffin, you ate what you wanted to, and you still love parts of what you ate. Why don't you think kids of this generation are wise enough to learn from their families, to draw their conclusions, pick up the cues, figure things out for themselves in ways that many generations have done?
Let that be, but I am not talking about that I as a person should not have a choice, or a parent as parents should not have a choice. But if a school under their premises are bringing in rules so that they can have an inclusivity, I'm again repeating, so that it respects everybody around. What is a difficulty? Tomorrow you will say, I don't want to send my daughter in a skirt. I want to send her in pants. I don't want to send her in pants. I want in salwar kameez. I don't want to give her in a school bus because I'm uncomfortable with the environment. I want to drop her myself. I want to pick her up myself. I don't want her to eat thanda khana in the school. I want to give her a choice that I would go pick her up and, give her a hot food and put it across. All I'm saying is these are not so dangerous as a rule when it comes to having a school run.
I mean, if the parent can go get the child, give them a food, that's their choice. If they want to go and take the child to drop the child to the school and pick the child up by themselves, that's their choice. It's the same way the tiffin as well. Let the parents decide.
See, I am in a way agreeing with you.
I know it isn't as easy and as simple. No, that's true. This debate isn't about veg or non-veg. That's for certain. This debate is definitely not about veg or non-veg. This debate is about a principle. Its debate is about what many parents have felt, that this is about, this is invading their right to choose. And of course, as we spoke to even the former education secretary, it's so much more larger. It's about how schools need to be adopting to a very, very challenging environment. particularly with the history of India, of how it is extremely diverse and inclusive. Pradeep Rawat, Neeraj Kumar, as well as Khushbu Jain, thank you very much for talking to us. I hope the school that's made this respectful request, quote unquote, also has something strong to take away from this show. Thank you very much for joining us. It's time for a very short break. On the other side, do stay tuned in for all the big and the latest news.